The distinction between a story and a perspective is really quite useful. It's useful to separate the series of actions that occur, the story that is, from the way in which you're thinking about those actions, the perspective. To see why, let's consider one more example. So imagine you run a fishing business. Maybe your family has fished for 3 generations and now you're in charge. The business is a big part of your identity, and many family members have been a part of it over the years. In the last 2 months, the amount of fish you're catching is lower than what you expected to catch. So what do? Now, it's possible you just explain it away. There are always some fluctuations, there's variability, sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, maybe you're just unlucky. Your expectations are never exactly on target. So you just keep doing what you're doing. You use your existing perspective and keep advancing your story, taking the actions that follow from that perspective and interpreting what's happening in typical ways. That's entirely possible. Now, alternatively, you might see if there have been problems with your team. Your little brother, the troublemaker, joined the team 2 months ago. This is a family business. You wanted to give him a chance to redeem himself, or you felt an obligation to be his employer of last resort. So you check in with the team leader, see how your little brother's doing, and see if you can step in to help improve performance. So in this case, you're using your existing perspective and then possibly adding to that perspective as you find out more about your little brother's performance and how it's influencing the team's performance. In that case, what you're then doing is continuing your story with a little bit of addition to your perspective. Now, in contrast, instead of advancing your story, you could stop and consider a different perspective. Maybe you can consider the catch going down to be a positive outcome and not a negative outcome. It's a crisis that gives you an acceptable reason to let your little brother go, the one you never wanted to hire in the first place. Or maybe there are criticisms of your company that you've been overfishing, and you realize that if the catch shrinks just a little bit more, you'll hit the reduced level that your critics have been calling you to do it in the past. So you decide to tell the team to catch even less fish and generate a marketing campaign emphasizing your commitment to sustainable fishing practice. Okay, so stepping back, a change in perspective enables you to consider lines of action that you would not otherwise have considered. You can feel productive if you just keep advancing your story. If you change your perspective, though, you might find a better way to advance your story, or even realize that you might want to tell an entirely different story. But to change your perspective, you usually have to stop advancing your current story. It can feel like you're not being very productive. The difference between advancing your story and stopping to try to change your perspective is critical, and it's well described by a great quote from Amos Tversky, one of the great psychologists of the 20th century. He said, "You can waste years if you can't waste hours."